Twitter files, have you looked at those things? Because I'm kind of curious what you think of those. I'll just give you my thought and perspective. I mean, with the latest wave, I guess that came a few weeks ago or maybe even a month ago, we saw a lot of government agencies meddling in the Twitter's business and asking them to shut down accounts, to suppress messaging or suppress the viral growth of messages. And it honestly looked like it was like a dog pile at some point. You had FBI, things that looked like the CIA, Senate subcommittees, all these people coming in all these different attack vectors, basically telling Twitter to do this and do that. We had a very interesting experience in 2020, Mike, where in April 6th of 2020, I had the second largest YouTube live stream broadcast in the world right here in the studio. And that video was subsequently deleted and banned about 30 minutes later. It never happened to me in my 9-year history at that point. And then I started getting taken off of all these other social platforms, and I got thrown off Dropbox and PayPal, and for having this same person ask open questions about PCR tests, masks, things that were deemed not okay by the tech platforms.
Yeah.
And at the time, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I leave that to my guests, but I just thought, okay, that's a little odd. But when I look at the Twitter files, I'm like, wow, if there really was agencies going around to one big social platform telling them not to allow the Hunter Biden laptop story to go or this or that, it's pretty obvious to think they probably are asking Google and Meta and these other companies to do the same thing. And I started thinking, well, maybe there was a coordinated attack. What do you see when all this evidence comes up, if you even consider it evidence?
Yeah, no, I do to some degree. Look, there's nothing more dangerous than a politicized intel organization or a politicized law enforcement, particularly federal law enforcement organization. So people should always be concerned and on the lookout and wary and cynical and questioning, right? And in part, we give that responsibility in the U.S. to organizations like the Senate Intel Committee and the Congressional Intel Committee. We send our representatives to Washington, and they get on those committees, and we trust, in part for some reason, not sure why, that they will ask intelligent questions, and they'll be curious people, and they'll be inquisitive, and they'll want to demand and know answers. And typically that doesn't happen because Washington, D.C. is completely dysfunctional, and it's where all investigations go to die. So I think that, first of all, I guess from a 30,000-foot view, you have to be very, very careful, very cynical, and very cautious. Now, transparency is important. From an intel perspective, you stop short of sources and methods, right? There's a reason why you do keep secrets in the intel community, right? But that only goes so far, right? And you then have to ensure that you have transparency and understand, to the degree that it's possible what they're doing. So I think with Twitter, was there an effort? Well, sure, there's an effort right now to influence social media, and I don't understand why, in part, it seems like it's acceptable, right? But there does seem to be this attitude that if I don't like your speech, well, then we just don't want to deal with it, right? Maybe it goes back to what we were talking about earlier with the softening of society, this idea that words are violence. So bullshit, words aren't violence, right? The First Amendment in the U.S. protects all forms of speech, right? And so you may not like it, but I have the right to say it. And that is, if you remove that, right, and suddenly the mob rule tells you what you can think and what you can't think, then we're no different than, Putin and his regime or Xi and his regime. And so I think the Twitter files it's an important exercise because I think it is surprising a lot of people. It's not going to change, it's not influencing the hard edges, right? The hard left is going to look at it, gosh, that's propaganda, that's bullshit, because it's not what they believe in. They don't want to hear it. And the hard right already believed it, right? So they're not changing, but it is having an impact, I think, on those, few dozen people that still live in the center.
The CIA was also trying to influence Twitter, right? There's this nameless organization in those files, but it basically is them, right?
Well, I don't know, but I will say that the CIA, the FBI, do they have a role to play in the world of the internet? And I guess their role should be, if I'm an analyst, for example, I was never smart enough to be an analyst, but if I was an analyst for the agency, and we've identified a bot farm, a Russian bot farm that is spewing out bullshit, around an upcoming election, whether it's 2024 or the congressional elections or whatever, then you would like to think that there's a mechanism for the intel organization, whoever it is, to brief the responsible people who have the clearances within those organizations, social media companies, to say, we are providing you with insight into what is happening. Just like with the FBI. If the FBI twigs on a Chinese espionage plot operating somewhere in the US, designed to target, pick a company, Raytheon, IBM, whomever, then you'd like to think that the FBI goes to them and says, we have identified this, right? And we're providing you with this information from a security perspective, right? That's, in my book, that's okay. That's a good use of your intel or your law enforcement. The problem is when it goes off the rails. The problem is when they say, we're not really sure, but you should be on the lookout for, Russian bots, and, here's the sort of thing they might say, so keep an eye out, and maybe what you want to do is we'll put, half a dozen of our people in with you, and they'll kind of keep an eye on things too, and it all gets a little bit too cozy, right? There's a level of dialogue that I'm okay with from a security perspective on hard evidence, on hard intel, on obvious information that should be provided. When it gets beyond that, that's when you have a problem, when they start influencing and start saying, maybe this is what you ought to think about doing, right? But that's enabled by people up on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. We've got politicians now that are yelling and saying, well, the social media should start, censoring this or that. Bullshit, right? I mean, that's a real problem. When politicians and when intel or law enforcement starts all working together to decide what is appropriate to hear, you got a real issue.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. It was just fascinating for me to see how the Twitter people were pushing back and just like saying there's no evidence of any Russian meddling here, and yet that was just the narrative that they had just chosen and were kept hitting them with it. It seemed at some point the Twitter execs just acquiesced and were like, all right, whatever you want to say, if you want us to take it down, we'll take it down, but we're tired of telling you there is no Russian influence there. So,
and then you think about it, and what they'll do is any organization, has some agenda, right? And so you could argue that Twitter's, personnel were primarily sitting on the left side of the spectrum. So they'll take that advice, so they'll take that general warning from law enforcement and from intel, and then they're going to use their own, they're going to edit it themselves, right? And they're going to decide within that, okay, what do we don't like, or what do we suspect? Well, their own personal agenda is going to influence it, whether they're on the left or whether they're on the right, right? It's just human nature. It's the way it's going to work. So it's a very dangerous thing because, either side can play that game. And I just, I'm not sure how we got to the point where we're all so concerned about words, right? Maybe you're offended by it, but so what, right? Move on.
So Jim Rickards has just recorded a video that's not available to anyone in the public, and he's going to be talking about how this upcoming recession is going to be fast, it's going to be bloody, it's going to be nasty. But at the same time, he's going to show you how you can position yourself to profit from all of this chaos. Now, we've made this video only available to our viewers. Go to londonreal.tv/Jim. Watch that immediately. I can't say enough good things about Jim Rickards. He understands the global economic system better than any guest I've ever had on London Real. His predictions are almost uncannily true, and you can learn how to profit from his vision, from his expertise, and his understanding of economics. So go to londonreal.tv/Jim or click the link below. It's an excellent, excellent look on what's going to happen in the future and how you can position yourself to profit from that. Jim is one of the best in the business, one of my favorite guests on London Real, and he's very, very good at predicting the future and showing us all to profit from it. So click the link, and I hope you enjoy. The greedy bankers are about to do it again. In 2008, they crashed our financial system and nearly bankrupted the entire global economy. Then they received trillions of dollars in government bailouts. And after, they demanded fat bonuses paid for by you, the taxpayer.
It turns out the banks haven't just been screwing the American taxpayers, they're also screwing over their investors. Turns out the banking industry is the worst place you could put your money, despite enormous taxpayer bailouts.
Now the bankers are back to take away your financial freedom. They lie and tell you that cryptocurrency isn't safe. They try to make it illegal for you to choose how to invest your hard-earned money. They lie and say cryptocurrency is used by money launderers and criminals. But look at the record. It's the banks themselves that launder hundreds of billions of dollars every year to the biggest criminal operations in the world.
Leaked documents have revealed how some UK banks have helped criminals, money launderers and Russians under sanctions.
American authorities discovered that the Sinaloa cartel moved $881 million through HSBC accounts as bank officials turned a blind eye to the illegality.
The bankers lie and say cryptocurrency is not a real investment. Meanwhile, the smartest CEOs in the world are buying billions and billions of it. The truth is that banks lie about cryptocurrency because it makes them scared. The banks take $9 trillion per year of your hard-earned money, and they are worried that they will finally be exposed. They're scared because crypto means they can no longer control your money, which means they can no longer control you. They are scared because you might actually understand your money and intelligently decide what to do with it. Now is the time for us to come together, fight back, and take control. It's time to educate ourselves, our families, and our communities. Because financial education means financial freedom. We know that cryptocurrencies will help us build the new decentralized financial system of the future. A banking system that is of the people, by the people, and for the people. A banking system where access to finance is a fundamental human right. A banking system that is free and fair and welcomes all humans on this earth. The DeFi revolution is happening. We, the people, can no longer be fooled. We choose to take control of our finances. We choose to take control of our freedom. We choose to take control of our future. Join us, and let's take back our financial freedom forever.